Hello, I'm Tim Moody. I'm the President and CEO of Pan Global Resources. We're a Canadian-listed company. Our company focused on really copper exploration in Spain. The company's made a new copper discovery in the Iberian Pyrite Belt. We have lots of upside, both at our original discovery, which is continuing to grow, but also on the many new targets that we're only now just beginning to test. So lots of ways to win for investors in Pan Global.
Brilliant. Well, Tim, thanks for coming on the show. It's a new story for us. We love a copper story, so even more excited about that component. So we've got a TSX company run by an Aussie operating in Spain. So we better start with the jurisdiction question, which is Spain has got a bit of a reputation for being a tough place for miners to do business. NIMBYism is rife. Is that right?
I think that's doesn't really portray the area that we're working in. So southern Spain, and where our main project is located, is in the Andalusia, and it's more particularly in the Iberian Pyrite Belt. Now that is a mining-friendly part of Spain. It's where most of Spain's mining industry is located. There are 5 large operating mines in the belt, very actively explored, and it has a track record of fast permitting from grassroots discovery right through to commencement of mining. So there are other parts of Spain, less mining friendly, without the same pedigree. And yes, there are difficulties in some of those areas, but those are particular to those regions, not where we're operating.
Okay, so the Iberian Pyrite Belt that's what long-established mining jurisdiction. So has it got a well-established sort of mining code and process in terms of how you go about doing your business?
Yes, it does. It can be laborious at times. You've got to be patient, but the mining law is very solid. It's a first-come, first-served system. Once you are permitted, that is like an act of law. It's written in law, basically. You have the rights to go and do that work, and you have the government behind you. So even down to getting access, if you run into problems with getting access to an area, there are pathways and solutions where the government can intervene on the company's behalf. So this is a great place to be exploring.
Right. And how long have you operated there for, or have you worked there before?
Yeah, well, this I guess comes back to some of your earlier comments about my background. An Australian running a Canadian company, living in the UK with assets in Spain. So I worked for Rio Tinto for 24 years, and at one stage I moved. In fact, Rio Tinto made a discovery in the Iberian Pyrite Belt called Las Cruces. And after that discovery, I was asked to come over and run Rio Tinto's exploration in Spain and Portugal. And at that time, it became the largest exploration project for Rio Tinto anywhere in the world, primarily focused on the Iberian Pyrite Belt. And that's where I've really zeroed in on for Pan Global. And I know the area well. I know the geology. I know the targets. And more particularly, I knew this particular patch of ground where we made our first discovery.
Okay, so you know the rocks and you know the districts. We better get to know you a little bit more and the team. So when did you join the company, and what was the brief to you?
Yeah, so when I left Rio Tinto, I actually started a private company in Spain on what was the Águilas project. I met with some of the directors of Pan Global. They were looking for a project, and I mentioned I had this very early stage exploration project in Spain, and we said if we could work something out, then they'd be welcome to farm into the property or whatever. So anyway, cut a long story short, I farmed the property off to Pan Global, and soon after they asked if I would come in and run the company. So That was not part of my plan when I left Rio Tinto, but here we are. I've continued to do that for the last, nearly 4.5, coming up to 5 years.
Right, and in terms of the rest of the team, I'm kind of interested in the people who actually do stuff, not the names on the nameplate stuff, but who have you got that actually helps you on a day-to-day basis in terms of moving the project forward and the company forward?
Yeah, so look, one of the advantages of being familiar with Spain was that when I started to get Pan Global active, I called up some of my former colleagues and people I knew, and I was able to almost plug and play. And I built a team around some of the people that used to work for me or work with me in the past. So I've continued to build the team and build the capacity. We now have, 6 or 7 geologists. We've brought on a general manager this year who is a mining engineer, very experienced, also, as it turned out, worked for Rio Tinto for many years. But more importantly, has experience of taking projects from pre-resource right through to development. Further to that, he also has open pit mining experience, which is very relevant to what we've got. And his last mining operation, where he was the manager, they were producing tin, which is one of the commodities that we've been finding as well at our main project. So he brings a lot of strength. Jim Royal, VP of Exploration, very strong geologist. Again, he worked for me with my team in Rio Tinto many, many years ago. He lives in Spain. He knows the Pirate Belt very well, knows Spain very well. So again, a really good addition to the team. Jim's been alongside Pan Global and our exploration of the Pirate Belt since we began, really. So those are just a couple of the people, but we've also got another mining engineer who is very experienced, very well regarded, helps with dealing with the administration. A very good team overall. Yeah. And I should say, a very diverse team. We're with about 50% girls, 50% guys, and really enthusiastic. I hosted a board meeting last week, and that was one of the messages that came back to me from the board, was just how pleased they were to meet the team, but also just how enthusiastic this sort of young geology team was in particular.
No, it's fantastic. More of it. I was actually talking to some people earlier today about it. We need more of it, more diversity, and more new thinking. Okay, so that's the team. We don't even need to have a conversation about infrastructure, because there you are, sited near roads, water, power, ports, smelters, etc. So you're in the right part of the world. Makes life easy and cheap in terms of not having to build camps and house people or fly in, fly out. So that's all kind of good news. So can we just leap to the assets themselves? So in terms of the portfolio that you've got, there's a lot of moving parts, so you've got to get a little bit focused. So what should we be looking at first?
Yeah, so as I say, our main project is in the Iberian Pirate Belt. So I think it's important for people to really understand that this is a really important geological province, a mining province, continuously mined for 3,000 years. So not everyone realises just how much pedigree, how much background there is in this particular part of the world. We've got a piece of ground, quite a large area, over 5,500 hectares at the eastern end of this very prolific belt. We're surrounded by some big miners. We've got First Quantum, just a stone throw to the east. Right next door to us, we've got Grupo Mexico, who are looking to restart an old Boliden mine at the Asnoquan Los Frailes mining area. And then further to the west, about 20 kilometres, is the site of the original Rio Tinto mine, where the Rio Tinto company began, which is the largest volcanogenic massive-sulphide deposit in the world by a long way. So we're really surrounded by giants. So I think that's really important to point out. And the other really key part of our story is that this is generally a pretty well explored area. It's had you can imagine with all the activity, the history there, how much exploration activity has been going on for a very long period of time. But this patch of ground that we've got really escaped any serious exploration since the early 1980s, and that makes it really unique. And I was aware of that from my background, having run Rio Tinto's exploration there many years ago, but not everyone else would be so familiar with that. So that's really important, because this otherwise very well explored, mature exploration area, to find an area that had really been unexplored since we're getting up to 40 years is really quite remarkable. And given its location with these other big deposits all around us, it's probably no surprise that our first drill holes on our first target found an ore body, potentially an ore body, let's say. So,
well, actually, that's a really important point you make there, which is like potentially an ore body, and people use the word discovery quite loosely. I mean, how do you define it?
Yeah, I think the way I describe it is that we've had a drill intersection of grades and thicknesses that you would think could have a very good chance of developing into a mining project. So that's how I would define it. Our first discovery hole, what I call discovery hole, was over 20 metres. Over 1% copper plus some tin plus some silver from 30 metres below surface. We followed that up with even better intersections. So that's why I call those discovery holes, and that's proven with the drilling we've done. We'll continue to hit with nearly every drill hole for the next 130 holes after those first holes.
Well, how did you do that? I mean, did you buy data? Did you inherit data? Obviously, you bringing assets into the company, so you knew a bit about it. But what's the total sum of the knowledge that you have in terms of what you're looking at?
Yeah. So again, one of the keys for us was that we acquired some old exploration information. It wasn't necessarily on the public domain. Some old Exxon exploration data, which included some maps with old gravity contours and some other drill hole information and so on. We digitised that, and from that information we were able to identify a number of what we call gravity anomalies, geophysics targets, and it was one of those called La Romana that we decided, well, let's do 2 lines of gravity, ground truthing of that anomaly, and we did 1 line of IP, geophysics, and then we drilled. So very quick, let's see what the anomaly is, let's see what's causing it, let's get some geology information, and our first hole into that target hit what I call the discovery hole. So that's really how it happened. And using that information, that early Exxon information, that's formed the basis for identifying other targets in our property package.
Right, and it's been quite sort of, as you said, reasonably, shallow to actually, hit some of these targets of yours. But you're also looking at things like Romana Deep, which is going down, over 400 meters here. So, how does what is the plan on the drilling to allow you to kind of build a model of what it is that you're looking at here? Because I read somewhere about 20,000 meter multi-joule target. That you're going after. Where are you with that? How much more have you got to do? And what's the kind of picture you're trying to build?
Yeah, so with that early geophysics information that we had from the old historic exploration, we've set about this year in particular with doing our own surveys over the entire area. So that includes a more detailed gravity survey. We flew the area with a helicopter electromagnetic survey and magnetic survey. We've covered large areas with surface soil geochemistry and some mapping, etc. And then we followed up in particular targets with other tools like ground IP or some more detailed geological mapping, etc. And from that, we then build up a picture. And the more of these sort of coincident indicators of potential for mineralisation there are, the higher the priority that target is generally. So that's really how we've gone about it. We've now been using our own information and trying to back those anomalies up with with additional information so that we're not just relying on one piece of data to guide us. Hopefully we've got 2, 3, 4 or 5 sets of information that's coinciding and allows us to maximise our potential for success when we do go and drill.
Right, and how does it break down at the moment? Because you talked about, over 1% copper, which is great, but you're also chasing tin. There's some silver in there, and is it majority copper, or is it a kind of polymetallic, and you're going to be reporting in copper equivalent numbers? I mean, what do you know?
Yeah, so obviously we've got not just the La Romana target, but we've got a dozen or more of them, and we continue to generate others. So it's just that our first target, La Romana, had copper and, very interestingly, had some tin, which is not common in these systems, and a bit of silver and so on. So that's not to say that everything else we find is going to be the same. As I say, tin in these systems is somewhat unusual, but a really positive attribute, because tin in these systems tend to only occur with the very big copper-rich VMS type deposits. So we take the presence of tin as a very positive sign in terms of potential for finding something very large. But some of these other targets, we might be following up a zinc anomaly. I reported recently that we started drilling a new target called Hornitos. That was a big zinc soil geochemistry anomaly, had a gravity anomaly with it and some IP as well. We've drilled the first couple of holes into that. And as I reported, we've hit some sphalerite and galena mineralisation, in other words, zinc and lead mineralisation in those first holes on that target. So we know that the techniques are working. Have we got a zinc deposit? We don't know. These things can be polymetallic, as we know. But, a big price for us is copper, given its importance in this location.
Right, okay. So you've got the Escacena project, you've got multiple targets and anomalies and so forth, and at the end of July, where are you at for money? Because I'm looking at end of July, so just shy of $14 million. Where are you today?
Yeah, so we've set out at the beginning of the year to drill a 20,000 metre program, a lot of that on La Romana, but a good amount on new targets. So, we started out the year at probably $14-15 million. We brought some money in from warrants, etc. By the end of this, currently we're sitting on about a bit over 11 million. By the end of the year, coming into 2023, we should be sitting on a bit over 8 million. So, we're in a strong position, going into 2023.
Well, yeah, I mean, it definitely gives you options, and it doesn't, put you in that kind of cash constrained position, which could, a lot of companies have found themselves in. So it's a question of how do you allocate that capital? Because again, with lots of options on the table, you've got to be careful that you spend the money wisely and efficiently, and kind of drive that value creation. It's a bit difficult in a market like this, which is slightly risk off and coming into tax season to maybe think like that. But new year, new beginnings. So what are the plans for next year? Yeah,
no, it's a good question. I guess the first thing I'd say is, yes, we have to be very conscious of the market we're in, and being careful with every dollar that we've got. So yes, we are lucky that we're in a great position that we've got money in the bank, so we're not having to rush out trying to find do a capital raise anytime soon. So that's in the meantime, we hope that the market will get stronger, but we do have to be very sort of it's a balance really. But that said, look, the cost of exploration for us is a lot less than perhaps a lot of other copper explorers are facing. Say companies in North America or South America, where you've got very difficult, challenging terrain, or higher labour costs, higher drilling costs, these sorts of things. Look, for us, costs are pretty light by comparison, which is why we're able to put, as I think a bit over 80% of our cash into the ground, which is a very high proportion when you compare it to other exploration companies.
It is. So, but give me a sense of what you think is important to do next year. I appreciate you're going to have to, just keep an eye on what's happening in the markets, what's happening in the economy, etc. But what do you think is going to be important for you? Because why I ask is because I've interviewed lots of companies, exploration companies, but also interviewed a copper producer in Spain, and the biggest millstone around their neck was energy costs, because they're in production. But for you as an explorer and the stage that you're at, you're saying it's a relatively light touch in terms of your cost base. But have you been affected at all by these supply chain issues, skills shortages, inflation, any of these factors?
No, not really. Fortunately, we're not dealing with these the challenges of high energy costs. We don't use a lot of fuel. We don't use a lot of electricity. I expect that there may be some pressure on labour costs, but in terms of skill shortages, we have a very good team, a very strong team. We're well equipped for big exploration programs. So I don't see that being the issue for us. For us, it's about really prioritising the targets that we've got, being really efficient with the exploration work we do, being very systematic, methodical, and then to try and build a strong target before we go in there and drill it, so that we get the best, as I say, best bang for our buck when it comes to testing these new targets. But you're absolutely right. We need to be really focused in this environment.
I mean, let's just talk about the kind of corporate structure here, because there's a few names I recognise in there: Pat Downey, Pat Evans, and obviously Andy Marshall, CFO. How much does the management team own? How much have they put into it? How are they incentivized? In terms of options and so forth. Because I think that's a really important indicator to the market as to how serious you are about moving this thing forward.
Yeah. So currently, the insiders hold about 8.7% of the shares that are currently issued, which is a pretty good. That's just the directors, myself and Andy included. In that, So in terms of other incentives, I guess we've been issuing options each year. I guess we don't issue all of the available options. We've been fairly prudent in our distribution of those. But I guess we hold. I certainly have a lot of options. I currently hold close to 6 million shares personally. Plus, I'm not sure what the number of options is, but. We're all very incentivised to, in terms of the senior management and the team on the ground to deliver. We've all hold options.
Okay, and given your cash position, you're not rushing out to the market anytime soon. So your current cash will take you through to when? Yeah.
So going into 2023, we'll have a bit over 8 million in the bank. Again, our plan at this stage, we're still refining that, but we're looking at a similar number to what we went into 2022 with, which was about $8 million. So I expect at this stage, our working position is to go into 2023 with a similar spend. So, if we need to, string things out a bit, we can do that. We've got the flexibility to do it, but we can also turn the drill rigs up, accelerate the program as well if we have any success. So that's the benefit of having the money we've got in the bank. But we can go right through the.
You got 3 drills turning, right? You got 3 drills turning at the moment.
We've got 2 at the moment, looking for a 3rd rig.
Okay, looking for a 3rd. Okay, fine. Well, as a kind of nice introduction to this company, I appreciate you sparing the time to see us today. Love to kind of get into the weeds with you technically about what those drills are doing and how you're going about planning that drill program. So I'm not maybe see you before Christmas, maybe not. Who knows? What's your expectations of the old copper market? Because metals prices good, equities not so much.
Yeah, well, I guess I look at inventories. That's one thing I look at. I'm not a copper trader, but certainly the inventories are very low for copper. But I think the other thing that's really, I think the eye-opener is just how much copper is going to be required to meet these sort of energy transition requirements. But bear in mind also that the world's still growing. The large parts of the world are still developing. So copper is just one of those metals that's just it's fundamental for not only for improving people's quality of life, but also what's different about this current trajectory over the next few years is this transition from oil and gas based energy to alternative forms of energy. And unlike many of the other what they call battery metals and so on, copper is required in every element of the energy system, whether it be the batteries, the cars, or the infrastructure that's required to get from the energy from a wind turbine through to a terminal for a charging station for a car. Copper is the key metal for all of those things. You can have all the lithium batteries in the world, but if you don't have the infrastructure, which needs lots of copper to deliver that energy for those batteries, then lithium is not going to be so important.
It bodes well for copper. Big infrastructure investment, big EV revolution going on out there. Should be a good year for copper. Let's hope so. Appreciate your time today, Tim, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks very much, Matt.